good morning. This is Kelsey from Kels Reads Things at Anna Porter Public Library in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. And today I'm very excited to be discussing with you City of Fallen Angels. This is the fourth book in the Mortal Instrument series by Cassandra Clare. And at this point, the series has been expanded because originally it was supposed to be just a trilogy, but thankfully Cassandra Clare was able to dive into her creative juices and create three more books for us in this series. As you know, the Mortal Instrument series is a young adult fantasy series that began to follow with Clary Frey, I believe was her original last name. She has discovered recently that she is a shadow hunter, and they are a race of superhumans who have angel blood in them, who basically defend and save humanity and morality from downworlders as well as demons and other supernatural threats in the world. And at this point in the story, they finally defeated the main villain, who turned out to be Clary's father, Valentine. If you've read the original three, you know at this point that Clary and her love interest Jace are in fact not related, not brother and sister. He was merely adopted by Valentine and told that Jace was his biological son. And at this point, Clary and Jace can finally have a relationship, and Clary can finally learn how to train as a shadow hunter now that Valentine has been defeated and major threat has been defeated. Alright, so now, at this point in the Shadowhunter's story. So this was very much a character-driven book. There was definitely an underlining plot that connected, all of our multiple characters together. The storylines focused on Simon's perspective, Clary's perspective, a little bit of Jace, but it was primarily between Clary and Simon. This book had a lot to do with their own journeys. As we know, Simon is now a vampire and has been since book 2, but he's learning how to actually cope with being a vampire, and he's confronting some issues he's never run into before, including how to explain to his family, his mother primarily, that he is now a child of the night. But he can walk in the daylight. He is a daylighter, as other vampires refer to him as. He can do that because he drank Jace's blood at a time of dire need. And because Jace is of angelic heritage, he is able to, again, walk outside. And I'm eager to find out about other abilities that he might have we may not even be aware of until maybe the next book. We'll see. And Clary and Jace in this book are, of course, finally together. They are, happy to be together and in a healthy state. Unfortunately, Jace is going through something at this point in the book, and it's causing a lot of tension and unnecessary issues and strain between Clary and Jace, and I won't really expand on that because it would give away a lot of information and a large spoiler, so I'll just say that again, this is very much a character-driven book, and I'm going to be just discussing briefly what all the characters are going through. So Clary and Jace, as I said, are experiencing a little bit of new challenges when it comes to communication and their relationship in general. Jace is going through something and experiencing something that is affecting basically how he interacts with her. That's definitely a major part of the plot point. The Lightwoods at this point were in the book. They weren't as prominent of characters or present as, they have been the last few books. They've all always been there, but again, they're kind of always been in the background, and that's still a little bit of what is, accepted here. Again, there's a few scenes where I believe Isabel is the main focus, or Alec, and it's told from their perspectives, but there's only a few chapters like that. They are grappling with the loss of their youngest sibling, Max. He passed away. He was murdered by Jonathan in book 3, yes. That was the major loss. I believe that I covered that someone passed on in book 3, but I didn't expand on that. And at this point, that is what occurs in book 4. Max has passed away, or has been murdered. And of course, the siblings are trying to grapple with that as well as their parents. Mia is also present, and I don't know if I've really discussed Mia much. She was a character that was introduced in book 2, and she is part of the pack of werewolves that Clary is associated with because of her stepfather to be. Luke, her stepfather to be, can't believe I forgot his name for a second there, that he is the pack leader and Mia is a werewolf. There's another new character who's introduced, but I can't really expand on that very much because it would be a major spoiler, so please just go ahead and read it, and then I'll be happy to discuss and expand on him a little bit in the next book. And finally, the overall plot point is that even though Valentine has been vanquished, he's been destroyed, there are shadow hunters that are coming up dead in different downworlder territories. And of course, our shadow hunters, as well as Simon and Mia, and they're all trying to figure out what is going on and who is causing these deaths. And it's definitely clear that whoever is causing it is trying to put blame on other downworlders to distract the shadow hunters from what is actually occurring. Simon is dealing with his immortality, as well as his morals a bit in this book. Clary and Jace are dealing with a lot of relationship struggles as well as private struggles on Jace's part, which I can't expand on too much without giving anything away. The Lightwoods are grappling with grief, and Alec is actually on vacation a lot in this book with Magnus. Finally, I believe that's pretty much it in all the relationships to each other and how they all are trying to solve this mystery of who is killing downworlders in different, or who is killing shadow hunters in all these different downworlder territories. And that's the general premise and plot point of this one. Okay, so I want to say that I really did enjoy this 4th installment. In fact, it was really entertaining. I read it while I was home really sick last week, and I managed to read like over half of it in one day. I think I got about 60% through. So that means that it was a pretty entertaining book. It gripped me almost immediately, especially because it started with Simon's perspective, and I've always loved Simon as a character. He's always been one of my favorites of all the characters that are present in this specific series by Cassandra Clare. She has multiple series of shadow hunters in all different settings, time errors, in relations to each other. It's very interesting. But I have always really loved Simon. He's been one of my favorite characters overall in the 2 series that I've been reading of hers out of the 4 that I'm eventually going to read. But he is struggling a lot, and not just with his morals, but also with being pulled in multiple different directions. And that's all I'm really going to say in terms of his struggle, because again, I don't want to give too much away. I thought the pacing of the novel was fantastic. As I said, I read it very, very quickly. There weren't really any metaphors that didn't make any sense, thank goodness, because I kept running into that in her 3 previous novels of the series, and that was something that just irks me as a reader. It's a personal thing. It's just something that I don't like. If you're going to make a metaphor, make it make sense, I guess. So I think that the writing style in general has improved. She's made, at this point, her stories just pace better. Her sentences are more structured. And the characters are just more endearing and interesting, of course, because they've been expanded on, because we're on book 4, of 6. So that definitely helped, I think, improve my take on these characters and on this story. So now I know I've talked about the characters a lot, but I'm going to just briefly talk about my thoughts and what I was thinking as the story was progressing. So for Simon, we're going to start with him because the story, again, started with his narrative, his perspective, and to be honest, it was heavily about Simon and about his choices, which I was disappointed as well as amused by throughout, and shocked by at least once throughout the entire book. And to be honest, a character that's perfect all the time is boring to me, so I liked seeing him kind of push his limits as well as, make decisions that I would not have expected of him. And plus, literally transforming from one species as a human to a vampire, I'm sure is exceptionally stressful and takes um, a little bit of time to adjust to and to cope with, so I can understand at least a few of his actions and thoughts and reasonings for things in this book. I really liked Clary, as usual throughout this book. She likes to jump into things and just be as supportive and helpful as she can be, whether it risks her life or not, and that's something I've always admired about her. Again, she and Jace are dealing with a lot of relationship concerns in this book, and I definitely think that they grew together, but the plot has thickened. And that's all I'm going to say about that, and all I'm really going to say about Clary, really just her having a normal teenage relationship, trying to read Jace and his moods and understand why he's reacting about things in the manner that he is, and it was just very much a book about their relationship as well. Poor Jace. Jace has already gone through a lot in his life, and it just keeps coming in this book. Jace just continues to experience a ton of grief. By the end, the script was completely flipped, and I'm very excited to see what happens next, because it definitely ended on a little bit of a cliffhanger. So again, I look forward to reading the 5th book in this installment, which is the City of Lost Souls. However, I have to read Clockwork Prince first, and I am in the midst of reading that now. And that's part of the Infernal Devices series, which is like the prequel to this series. But again, I'm trying to read them in publication order because that's the best way to avoid spoilers, apparently, according to the internet. Isabel, as I said, was, kind of in the background, but she still had a slightly stronger presence than in previous installments. I loved almost every moment with her, except for when she is interacting with Alec, because Alec is one of those characters I've always struggled with. I either really, really like him at times, and there are times when I just cannot stand him. And I think a lot of that is because he's a very emotional character and is driven by emotion, and I can relate to that because I was very much the same way and still am sometimes the same way. So I think I just see a lot of myself in him, or at least my past self, especially when I was a teenager, and I just like, oh god, look away, look away. But that's not to say that he's not a great character. He really is, and I do admire Alec. He was a little bit of a jealous, argumentative mess in this book, especially when it comes to Magnus and Magnus's past, because as we know, Magnus is a warlock and he is immortal, and Alec is, a human, and he is not. And because of that, Magnus definitely has a past that Alec isn't exactly comfortable with, and Alec is aware of his morality, so that becomes a little bit of a theme in the book. One of the major themes of this book was about the relationships to these characters and to each other. And that's something I always appreciate about books. I love when they expand on that, so you'll never hear me complain about a character-driven book. And again, Alec and his sister have just gone through a major loss, a major, major loss. So at the same time, Alec sometimes does grate on my nerves a little bit, but I can also understand and appreciate his character. So I'm trying to be a little bit easier on him. Mia, I love Mia. She was a wonderful introduction in book 2, and she continues to be a formidable, amazing character. She, as usual, was strong and ready to, kind of like Clary, throw herself into any situation that's needed in order to defend herself and her friends and the world. She's a little more dark, a little more tomboy. She's kind of like the opposite of Isabel, who's always dressed up, but they both have this like fierce personality about them, and I really can't wait for them to become really, really good friends. At least that's what I'm hoping for. Jocelyn was also present because she is marrying Luke. As we know, she came back in book 3 out of her coma. She and Clary had a lot to work through together to build a little more trust in the relationship again, and she and Luke are about to get married, and poor Jocelyn is dealing with a lot of past trauma because of elements and themes and things that happen in this book that bring up old memories and old trauma that she still hasn't exactly gotten past, so is interested in seeing her character try to cope through things as well. Alrighty, so those were all my thoughts, mostly in terms of what occurs in City of Fallen Angels. I thought it was a fast-paced book. I loved that it was very character-driven, but also there was a plot present, and it was prominent. It affected every character, and it brought them all together in the conclusion, and again, there was a big cliffhanger at the end, and it makes me exceptionally excited to read the next one. And because of how fast-paced it was, because I enjoyed the characters, because I enjoyed the story and the plot in general, I gave it 4 stars on Goodreads, but if I could, I would give it 4.5 stars. Thank you for watching my book review today. I look forward to discussing next week with you the life and medieval times of Kit Sweetly, about a girl who works for her uncle at a Renaissance fair, and she is determined to be a knight, whether it goes against the sexist regulations and policies of the Renaissance or not. And I absolutely loved it. It was very much a feminist novel, and I loved that about it. And I'll also, of course, be discussing other books that I am currently reading and have read, and I look forward to those in the future. Thank you again, and I hope you have a wonderful Tuesday.